Hello and welcome to this morning's webinar. My name's Peter Czapp, and for the next 30 minutes or so, I'll be taking you through what the most successful agencies are doing right now here in the UK. Before we start, I thought it'd be useful to share a little bit about what's led us to this point. And this journey started about 5 years ago. At the time, I'd been running the accountancy practice, the WOW company, for about 7 years, and we had several hundred clients, many of whom were agencies. And we wanted to do something more to help agencies. We've always felt that just doing the accounts was never enough, that business owners deserve much, much more from their accountants. So we got a bunch of agencies together and we said, right, what is it that you're looking for beyond the accounts? And the overwhelming response was insight. That's what agencies wanted, insights. They wanted to understand how they were doing against their competitors, how they were performing. And we produced what at the time was just a one-off report, a one-off benchmark report. But it went down so well that we did it again the following year and the following year, and we've done it every year since. And today it's now the largest independent survey of agencies here in the UK. 350 agencies took part, and a massive, massive thank you goes out to everyone who gave up their time to contribute to the report, because without you taking the time to complete the survey, the data wouldn't be anywhere near as interesting, and I wouldn't be here today talking to you about some absolutely fascinating results with some further stats that I'll be sharing now that weren't in the original report. So you're in for a real treat. In terms of the plan for today, it's focused on one simple topic, which is this: helping you be the best. Helping you be the best you can be in all of the key disciplines that it will take to run your agency. Now, I've had the great privilege of working with and having conversations with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of agencies over the last 12 years in this job. And do you know what? I've seen some incredible things. Some of our agencies have sold out. In fact, we've had two sell this month, which is wonderful. Some of our agencies have gone bust. You know, not everyone we work with is successful, and of course a whole range of businesses in between. And what's always fascinated me is the difference between those that make it big and those that tick along, and indeed those that don't quite make it. The thing that often stands out is this: the most successful agencies are the ones that prioritize learning. And I guess the fact that you're here today, taking time out to be part of this webinar, means that you're one step ahead of the rest. The next key to success and being the best is to make sure you take action as a result of that learning. I see so many people who've read the books, watched the video, downloaded all the white papers and read them all and can tell you exactly what's in them, but they've not taken the action that's required in their agencies to make the big difference. And as we're going through today's presentation, I'd just encourage you all to think about what you could do differently as a result of today. It's worth hanging around to the end of this, by the way, because the final couple of slides, I'll be taking you through what the top earning agency owners in the UK do differently compared to everyone else. But a really, really good starting point I thought would be around growth and looking at what you need to do if you want to grow quickly. So just to refresh your memory from the report, I'm not going to go through all the stats in the report. You can do that yourself at your leisure. But this was an interesting one. We looked at turnover growth over 3 years. It's the first time we've done this in 5 years. We've looked at predicted growth and growth from last year, but it's the first time we've looked at turnover growth over 3 years. To be in the top 4%, you need a 71% annualized growth rate, which is, let's be honest, pretty good going if you can manage that. Now, it certainly helps if your turnover is low. In fact, over half of the top 11% of top performing agencies when it comes to growth had a turnover 3 years ago of under £1,000. Sorry, yeah, 100 grand. Sorry, I'll start again. They had a turnover of under 100 grand. So low turnover makes it a lot easier to grow quicker. But what else was it that these fast growth agencies had in common? Well, here's an interesting one for you. There was a direct correlation between the marketing budget and the growth rate of agencies. Put simply, the more agencies spent on their marketing, the faster they grew. The more they spent on their marketing, the faster they grew. So I just want to share this with you, this stat from the report, where we looked at the percentage of turnover that agencies currently spend on marketing. Just have a look at that and think about where you fit in with your business. Now think about this. The fastest growing agencies spent more than 5% on their marketing, which means there's only 29% of agencies giving themselves a real chance for rapid growth, to be in the top performing agencies. Now, do you know what? There's plenty of agencies that are growing very, very nicely without a great deal of spend on marketing. But over a large sample size, over a large period of time, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? The more you invest in your marketing, the more you invest in the growth, the faster that you will grow. Now, clearly, the most important thing is that return on that investment. And so I was really curious around, well, okay, so if you're going to increase your marketing spend in order to grow, what should you spend it on? Well, we asked that question a couple of surveys ago. So if you go back through the WOW archives, if you go to the wowcompany.com/benchpress, you'll see all the previous year's reports. Excuse me. And we asked a question, which was, other than word of mouth, what are you currently doing to pick up new clients? And look, there's a big long list of things that they're currently doing. But this was the wrong question to ask. It asked what people are currently doing. It didn't ask what was working. Now, if you want to find out what's really working, I think you need to ask the experts. And I recommend a conversation with these two. So if you don't know these two smiling faces, Pete Hall and Spencer Gallagher run Cactus. That's what they're doing now. Previously, they grew an agency from nothing, from a shed in Spencer's mum's back garden, to being a top 10 European digital agency, eventually acquired by Blue Halo. And they now advise smaller agencies and basically how to repeat that journey and repeat the trick. And they see agencies all the time making mistakes with their marketing spend, spending it on the wrong things. And I caught up with them earlier in the week and they shared a couple of tips with me. The first one is to get someone in-house to do your marketing. They see so many agencies trying to crowbar in their own marketing and amongst client projects, and it just doesn't work. They also shared a couple of tips about what marketing really does work, and I'd encourage you to get in touch with them if you're really interested. Reach out to them on LinkedIn, because I'm sure they'd be happy to share those tips with you. A couple of things that, or a couple of other ways that you can find out what to spend your marketing on is tapping into the resources that the Agency Collective have. Now, I'm hoping that you've kind of heard about the Agency Collective. Some of you will probably be members. If you're not, I just wanted to signpost you to a couple of bits of content that they have that's just awesome. So if you don't know the Agency Collective, it is the largest community of ambitious agency owners here in the UK. It organises dinner events and has a load of really interesting content, all focused on helping agencies grow. These are some of the bits of content that they have. So there's 50 ways to win new business. An agency marketing masterclass, which it splits marketing into 4 sections and looks at what you need to spend 30% of your time on, 30, and then 10, the final 10%. And what's in that final 10% might surprise you. It's often what agencies spend most of the time doing, but actually there's other stuff that they need to be focusing on. Fascinating 1-hour webinar. How to make your agency famous. A wonderful talk from Adam Graham, current chairman of Beamer, and who's won Agency of the Year twice. He knows how to build agency fame, and he shares his tips. We've got how to build an awesome sales pipeline. And this is quite an interesting one, your agency sales dream team, sort of looking at the stages of agency growth, when you're, all the hats you have to wear when you're one-man band, when you're 5, 10, 20 staff, 35 and 50 staff, and looking at who are the key individuals you need as you build out your sales team and build that expertise. Fascinating. But you know what? The biggest benefit of all of that is the conversations that you have with other members of the community. You have the opportunity to hang out with other ambitious agency owners and ask them the questions. What is it that you do that's working when it comes to marketing? How are you growing quicker? And I think the opportunity to network and have those sorts of conversations with our peers is unrivaled. I'd encourage you all to check it out, the Agency Collective online. Here's an interesting stat for you. So we asked actually in the survey which membership organisations you belong to, and all the usual ones you'd expect to get mentioned. Beamer, the Drum Network, RAR, the IPA were all featured high up, as were Agency Collective. But when we were looking at the top performing agencies, the ones that were growing the quickest, we discovered that 56% of the fastest growing ones were actually members of the Agency Collective. It was a disproportionate amount, given that only 20% of those completed the survey were actually part of the collective. So there's something going on there, and if you're not part of it, it might be worth checking out. Next hot topic, cash flow. And if you want to get paid quicker, I've got some tips that will help, and some interesting stats as well to share. So the first one that we didn't mention in this year's report, but is featured in previous year's report, is a great stat around how quickly you get paid. So we certainly asked this year around what your payment terms were on your invoice, but you can stick, in many cases, whatever you want on your invoice. Your client often decides how quickly they'll pay you. And we looked at, through our data at WOW, what the average debtor days was. So how long it actually takes you to get paid. And the top performing ones had debtor days of just 2 days. The average was 41, and the worst performing was 95. And that kind of freaks me out, that 95 days, because if your average is 95, and you have some paying you quicker than 95, then I dread to think how long your worst payers are taking to pay you. This is where a lot of agencies come unstuck. They can get to $250,000, $500,000, $750,000, be sometimes even building towards a million turnover. And all it takes is a couple of months, a couple of clients to not pay on time. And if you don't have the right systems and procedures in place, it can take agencies down. So it's really important. This is really, really important. I've seen agencies with great potential go bust because they don't get this right. So here's what you need to be thinking about. Now, this stuff, I think is pretty obvious, but I just want to challenge you on how much of it you do and whether you can do it better. I think everyone can always do this stuff better. So asking for deposits, okay, is really, really important. It tests the relationship, and one of the questions we asked, and I'll share some stats with you later on, is what percentage up front you ask for. Now, that's less important than what you leave at the end. And I'll come on to the amount that you really need to be making sure that you leave at the end, or no more than. Staged payments is really, really important. The most successful agencies, certainly those that work on project work, will bill throughout the project. They will reduce their payment terms down to either by return or 7 days. Rather than 30 days. If you put 30 days in the invoice, you can't chase it till day 31. Now, if you put it by return, at least it gives you the option to chase quicker and try and get that cash in. I appreciate dealing with bigger businesses. Often they'll dictate for you. I have a solution for that coming up, which I think you'll like. Whatever your terms are, it's important to be upfront. As I say, it won't stop, particularly the bigger companies, negotiate. Well, just often telling you flat out that they're not going to accept your terms. It's either work with us on this way or not at all. But at least it gives you an opportunity to negotiate and say, well, look, okay, well, how about what else can we get in return? How about your payment terms might be terrible, but at least can we shift some of the money from the back of the project to the front of the project to somehow compensate for that? Whatever you do, it's so important to retain leverage. Don't send them the final bit of artwork or send the website live until you've been paid. Don't start that next project until you've been paid for the last one. It builds up and up and up, and it becomes a bigger and bigger problem if you don't. And it's important to have a system for getting cash in as well. Reviewing your debtors at least once a week is a really good habit to get into. To do that, you'll need an up-to-date finance system, one that ideally links to your bank. And you'll need a good, competent bookkeeper to be keeping on top of it, or to have outsourced that to someone who can help. Again, if you're not comfortable doing this, if you're the sort of person that leaves it for evenings and weekends, and you never get around to doing it, and you've got loads of unreconciled transactions, you're not really sure where your debtors are, this is the stuff that kills agencies. Just outsource it to someone who can do it. Get in touch with us. I'm sure we can help. but just get someone in who can do that job better than you. Now, some interesting stats. Um, these are the number of payment days that you put on your invoice. And I'm shocked that only 19% of agencies put either by return or 7 days. I'm really hopeful that when we ask this in 12 months' time, that people will have taken heed of my warnings around this. And um, look, you don't need to be a bank. The banks should be lending money to small businesses, not not other businesses. So I think it's important to reduce those down. Um, this is going to help, right? Market invoice. Now, that situation I described earlier, where you've got a client who simply will not listen to your terms. They say, look, we're going to pay you on 90 days. Tough luck. And then what you can do is use something like Market Invoice to release cash from that invoice earlier. So the way they work, I guess many of you will be familiar with the old invoice discounting factoring, where often it would be associated with big fees, very expensive, hard to get off as well. It became very addicted. You have to put all your invoices through it, and it was really difficult to get off. What Market Invoice will do is allow you to receive cash for certain invoices on a invoice by invoice basis. So let's have an example. You're about to bill someone 50 grand for a bit of work. They're not going to pay you for 90 days, but you obviously have to pay all your team and your freelancers and the rent and the rates and all of that sooner than that. So what you can do is you go to Market Invoice and you say, look, here's the client, and they'll credit rate them. You share some of your financial information and they'll credit rate you. And you'll say, look, here's the amount. It's going to be paid in 90 days. What rate can you give me? And they'll go out to the market and they'll find you the best rate. And this will all happen within 24 hours. Pretty neat. Check it out. They're really good, and it can make a massive, massive difference to your cash flow. Something else that's going to help, as I say, is looking at how much you bill up front and how much you bill on completion. I'm less fussed about the upfront thing because, do you know what? It depends on the size of project. If you've got a small project, we'll bill it all up front. If you've got a larger one, then you might only have a tiny percentage up front. So the stats there don't really tell us a great deal because it's not coupled with information around the size of the project. What I would say is do not leave more than 10% at the end on completion. So how many have we got? We've got 37% of agencies who are heeding this advice and leaving no more than 10%. The rest, my goodness, you are leaving yourself exposed. Think how much work you have done up to that point. Think of all the salaries that you've paid. Think of all the freelancers that you've paid. And you're then relying on your client to pay that final installment. If that final installment is chunky, it puts a lot of pressure on the final stage of the relationship. As I said, the upfront payment is less important. Probably what's more important is regular invoicing throughout the project. And a really neat tip is to get those stages signed off. Say, right, we've now finished the design stage. Sign here to say you're happy for it. You can do it electronically using Right Signature or Echo Sign, and have a little clause in there that says any amendments beyond this date will be chargeable. Really neat little tip to formalise the sign off. You can then trigger the invoice. It's got the full paper trail there, and it means that you can then at least have a conversation if there are any amends subsequently. So just something to think about there. I hope that's useful. Something else that's going to be useful to help you get paid quicker is this. Go cardless. We've been massive fans of Go cardless for a number of years, particularly relevant if you have lots of retainers. If you have lots of monthly retainers, you're a social media agency, PR agency, something like that, SEO, PPC, or indeed you work on projects over 12-month periods, 6-month periods that have regular billing intervals. Something like Go Cardless will really, really help you. It's a direct debit system. I'm really heartened to see that over a quarter of agencies are now using direct debits to collect cash. That certainly wasn't as high as that figure 3 years ago. It will be higher in time to come. And in fact, what we've seen is the agencies that use direct debit, things like Go Cardless, to collect cash in grow quicker, quite frankly, because they've just got more cash available. They spend less time faffing around trying to get the money in and can concentrate on growth. It gives them predictable revenue streams. The reason that I mentioned GoCardless ahead of everything else is just because it's so easy to use. I mean, phenomenally easy. If you go online now, you'll be set up in less than an hour. Honestly, less than an hour. Try doing that with your bank. Seriously, try doing that with your bank. We'll be releasing probably the next version of our bench press report in a year before you get results from your bank. GoCardless, 1 hour, bang, done. Really neat, really quick. So, next hot topic is profit. Who wouldn't want to make more profit, right? So, how do you do it? And indeed, what were the top performing agencies doing that helped them increase profit? Now, there's always been this correlation between charge out rate and profitability. Quite simply, the higher the charge out rate, your hourly rate, the more profit that you're going to make. But there's been some subtle changes this year. I mean, the first thing I would say is, the charge out rate thing still applies. There's no agency in the country making 40% net profit or more that charges less than the average hourly rate. And the average hourly rate is £86 an hour. It's unchanged from 12 months ago. But something that has changed from 12 months ago is, I guess it's been squeezed at the top of the bottom ends. If you look at the graph on the left is 2016 versus on the one on the right is 2015. So in 2015, there were 11% of agencies charging less than £50 an hour. That's reduced to only 3%. Also, there's fewer agencies charging the higher amounts. And, everyone's bunched in this sort of £50 to £100 an hour rate. So how on earth do you differentiate yourself? And there's a real challenge as well, because everyone's getting more efficient and slicker and better at what they do. Think about your own agency. I bet you're better at projects and delivering now, today, than you were 2 years ago. The technology has improved. Your systems and procedures have improved. Your team have improved. You probably hired better people. You're better and more efficient. But if you're still charging by the hour, well, that just means you're going to bill less. So that's not really good for anyone. And the absolute key to making more profit is this. It's to sell value, not time. And this was illustrated beautifully for me at a dinner I went to. I sat next to an agency, and they were a video production agency. I guess quite traditional in the sense of how they focus on video production. And what they had spotted was an opportunity to move away from just saying, we'll do your corporate video for £5,000, and saying instead, how about we create some content that can get you 500,000 views? Now, there's a big difference between, just another corporate video and a piece of content that can get you 500,000 views. People will pay more money for that. It's more valuable. It's held in much higher esteem, and it positions them on a different level. And they're completely rebuilding their business around this proposition of selling value, not their time. And I'll keep you posted on how they do, because I think it's going to be fascinating. And by the way, this isn't the only story. I could have told you countless others of examples of agencies, all sorts of agencies, who are doing this really, really well. They're selling value, not time. Another thing that's going to help is the software that you use to manage projects. So I think in the last survey, 3/4 of agencies were using project management software, which is awesome. The 25% that aren't, man, you're guessing you're making money on projects, and that's a dangerous place to be. I'd encourage you strongly to look at the project management tools that you have, and to make sure that you can see how and where each job is profitable. And the reason that logo's there is Agency Core do this incredibly well. They have a very, very simple, effective way of doing this. It's really, really neat. They've just done a recent update actually. So if you check it out, I think it's one of the ones to consider strongly when you're looking at project management software. Now, the big one. I promised you a big finale, and here it is. So if you want to be one of the agency owners that draw the most from the business, there's a number of things that you can do. So these are some stats around how much agency owners are drawing from the business. Just I'll give you a while to just let these numbers wash over you. Have a think about which section you're in and where that puts you. Are you in the bottom 25%, the middle bit, or the top guys? Now, we focus on the top guys, and I was really curious to understand what was it about them that allowed them to draw more than £8,000 a month from their business. So here we go. Now, question we asked in our report actually was this: should you pitch for new business, and if you do, how much do you give away? Well, there's two schools of thoughts for this, and there's two great books that will point you in different directions. There's a great book by Blair Enns, The Win Without Pitching Manifesto, which talks about the power of not pitching and creating yourself a position for yourself that means you don't need to pitch. David Keane has a different view and has written a wonderful book on how you can pitch to win. Two schools of thought, but let me tell you what the stats said. The top earners were more likely to pitch. Not by loads, but they were more likely to pitch. 65% versus 56%. They also worked on bigger projects. In fact, 19 out of the top 30 earners in the country had won projects in excess of £250,000. That's 63% versus 19% average. That's a big, big indicator of what the top earners are doing. 60% had a minimum project value of 10 grand or more versus a 22% average. Again, a big, big swing there. The agency owners that are drawing the most money don't get out of bed for less than 10 grand. They work on bigger projects. And do you know what? They've got beyond £1 million. In fact, 90% of those drawing £8,000 per month or more had turnovers in excess of £1 million. Fascinating. So, there is a clear message here. If you want to be one of the top earners in the country, drawing money from your agency, you need to hit that £1 million barrier. It's going to be really tough for you to do so without that. If you want to hit that £1 million barrier, well, let's be honest, it's going to be a lot easier if you have bigger projects. To win bigger projects, you need to set minimum thresholds. And also to win bigger projects, do you know what? You're going to need to pitch. So the key message here is for agencies to raise your sights. Where can you pick up bigger clients, better projects? And what do you need to do to win those pitches, to be in the elite, to bust through that £1 million barrier? And do you know what? Getting to that million is probably the hardest. I've chatted to so many agencies who said, oh, it took me a decade to get to $1 million, but it only took me like 5 years to get from $1 million to 5. Once you can crack that, everything gets a lot easier. That should be your target. Now, there's a lot of stats to keep track of, and something that's certainly going to help is a really good finance system. We've been talking about Xero for about 7 years now. We're the first accountants in the UK to discover it, and we were very glad that we did, as are our clients. It's a phenomenal piece of technology, and it's kicking Sage into touch, as you'll see here from this graph. In fact, if you are still on Sage, you are at a massive disadvantage compared to Xero users. Number one, you don't have direct bank feeds. You can't see how you're doing at the click of a button. And when it comes to debtor chasing, you can now do that automatically in Xero. It links to the bank. You can automatically send email reminders. If you want one-click reporting on your mobile, you can see it. You can access your accounts anywhere you are in the world, at any time, anywhere there's an internet connection. It's a phenomenal piece of software. And as honestly, if you're an agency owner and you're using spreadsheets or Sage or QuickBooks, you're at a huge disadvantage. Luckily, most agencies in the UK are now using Xero, just over 60%. So good on you. You're reaping the benefits. Here's an interesting stat for you about Xero. Survival rates here in the UK, small business survival rates, the national average is 41%. So to get only 41% of businesses get to 5 years. If you're on Xero, it's 88%. And do you know what? I'm not surprised. You're much better able to manage your cash. You're much better able to forecast. It's just a whole lot easier. And particularly for agency owners, if numbers aren't your thing, then you need to check it out. Go and speak to your accountant and ask them why they're not sticking you on zero. And if you don't get a good enough answer, well, you know where to find us. Other things that we can help with. I'm a big fan of dashboards. There's lots of stats and benchmark data, but I'd encourage you all to think about what are the 5, 6, or 7 things that you really need to be paying attention to. These are of strategic importance to you, and they're the things that you look at every month. And I'd encourage you to think about how you view that information. You don't need to be an accountant, but how are you sucking out the key bits of information and making sure that you have leading indicators and lagging indicators. I talk about that in the report. I'd encourage you to read up a little bit on that. Again, if you need our help, get in touch. The other important thing I just want to get you thinking about is this. What are you going to do differently as a result of listening to this webinar? Delighted you've given up your time, and hopefully you've been scribbling down some notes. But if you do nothing as a result of this, then it's kind of been a bit of a waste of time. So I'd encourage you to think about what you might want to do differently. It might be in the area of growth and investing in your marketing. It might be something around cash flow that we talked about. Maybe you're going to check out Go Cardless or Market Invoice. It might be around profitability. It might be something around pitching and winning bigger work. So what is it that you're going to do differently as a result of listening to this presentation? Do let me know. I'm easy to get hold of. Just drop me an email. I'd love to find out what you've done differently. If you're looking for more of this stuff, well, anyone can crunch the numbers. There are thousands and thousands of accountancy firms out there that can do your accounts. But I'll never forget that conversation 5 years ago with those agency owners where they said the key for us is insights, and that's what we provide our clients. If you are looking for more of that, then get in touch. We love chatting to agencies, and we'd love to chat to you. So hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.